Hi everyone, my name is Frankie Frazetta. I am one of the curators here at the Frazetta Museum, and I am Frank Frazetta's grandson. To start, I wanted to thank you for having us here. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it out. We had prior commitments at a convention this weekend. Hopefully next year we can try to block off the schedule to be able to meet you guys and head out there in person. To start, the museum is it was founded by my grandparents. The whole purpose of it is to preserve my grandfather's works, including pieces like the Mammoth. As far as the Burroughs pieces in here, this is it as far as the oils are concerned. We have a lot of sketches and such. Otherwise, a lot of the Burroughs pieces early on in his career were actually kept by the publishers. So I know ERB owns quite a few pieces. I just spoke with them recently, and they were telling me which ones they own. And to me, it's kind of cool that they have what they have. I'm glad that out of anybody other than us, they are the ones to have them. So, my grandfather and Edgar Rice Burroughs. They're kind of a synonymous thing. Everybody mentions my grandfather and Conan, but to me, Edgar Rice Burroughs was kind of the big one in my mind. I feel like most of his amazing pieces, his better pieces, were for Edgar Rice Burroughs. As a child, my grandfather loved Burroughs' stories. My grandfather's favorite artist actually is Hal Foster, and Foster did a lot of the Tarzan stuff way back in the day when my grandfather was a kid. And my grandpa would actually read Burroughs' books under his mother's table when she would cook dinner. And those were actually the only books he ever read of the stuff he painted for. So that's kind of cool in a sense. So he was working at EC Comics, met Roy Frankel, and he and Roy got along pretty well. My grandfather he had friends. He just, when it came to hanging out with anybody outside of work, it was very few and far between. You had Williamson, Torres, and Frankel mainly. You had a couple other guys too. But yeah, so Frankel and he got along, and Frankel was working for Burroughs around that time, and he would take on too much work and would ask my grandfather to help him out, either with finishing paintings for him, giving him kind of advice on what he should do with a piece, or helping guide a piece. And Frankel really took a fondness to my grandfather. He thought he was a great artist. He was just underappreciated at the time. So he kept trying to get my grandfather hired at one of the publishing companies that had been publishing Burroughs' books for a while. And they kept rejecting him, saying, "We don't need another artist." Eventually, it got to the point where Frankel had my grandfather paint two pieces completely by himself, but had Frankel submit them as his own, just to see what would happen. The publisher ended up taking the pieces. They loved them, and Frankel broke the news that they were actually Frazetta's, and that they should probably hire him to be one of their artists. So that's really where it started. From that point on, like I said, a lot of the publishers kept my grandfather's artwork early on, and that's just how it worked. Later in his career, you'd actually pay publishers or take a hit on commissions to be able to keep his original works. He was a huge collector of his own art. And the other cool thing about the first couple of Burroughs, the Tarzans and such, was those are all watercolors. They're all very small and watercolor. And that's because his pay wasn't really the best, he had said. But he was so flattered to work for Burroughs and paint covers of the artwork that he loved so much as a child that he ended up saying, "Okay, it's fine." He was very prideful and made sure that he was paid what he thought he should be paid for most of his stuff. But with Burroughs, there's a bit of an exception because of the stories. But yeah, I know as a kid, again, when I was a kid, hanging out with him, it was always Tarzan's, King Kong, and all of that. And again, Hal Foster was number one. Frankel he loved as well. Other art influences were like Wyeth and the like. The other cool thing, or interesting thing, I guess, is that I've personally begun reading some of Burroughs' tales, and the one that I started with was Pellucidar. Reading kind of the synopsis of the books, that seemed like the series that would interest me the most. And what's really funny about that is, starting the book, you have David, who is an athletic, like younger guy. He liked women very much, and then you had you had Perry, who was the studious guy, just wanted to learn, he's very scientific minded, and they worked together to do everything they did in those stories. But what's really funny is the parallel between that is my grandfather and Krankle. David reminds me of my grandfather, like 100%. That's really his personality. Reading those books makes me feel like I'm reading a book about my grandfather. And then from what I've told of Krankle, he was extremely studious. He had books strewn about his house, scrolls everywhere. He just wanted to learn. He loved learning. So Perry to me was Krankle. So reading the books, like I always look at Perry as Krankle, my grandfather as David. Because David's always running around chasing women or trying to be like a manly man, athletic guy, and then Perry is just trying to learn. And that's very much from what I've been told of my grandpa and Perry, very much like them. So to conclude, again, thank you guys so much for allowing us to do this. It really is, it means a lot to us to be part of the community still. I'm sure you see us post a lot on Facebook and the like. If you ever have questions on Facebook about anything, my brother and I are in most of the Edgar Rice Burroughs groups. I'm Frankie Frazetta on Facebook. He's William Frazetta. Feel free to tag us, ask us questions if you need. Again, that's kind of what we're here for. We're educators. That's the purpose of us working, or at least carrying on my grandfather's legacy. The other thing is with the museum, if you ever want to visit us, we're out in eastern PA, northeastern PA, if you want to get specific, like an hour and a half from the city in East Stroudsburg. Our website is frazettamuseum.com. We have tons of merchandise related to pieces like the mammoth, so if you want to grab something like that, feel free. And if you ever have any questions about the merchandise we sell, please reach out on our website. I'm the guy to answer you. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your time at the banquet, and I hope to see you next year.